Hello and welcome. This is Haunted Hollywood Hour with Tanya Dixon.
Hello there.
And me, Carly Heath. And today we have...
And the birds, of course.
And today I'm telling you about the now abandoned and allegedly haunted location of the former Los Angeles County Poor Farm, which has a history that's entangled with the California Gold Rush.
Ooh.
And the title of this, if this was a mini-series, might be something like Gold Rush to Poor Farm to Ranch of Friends, because that is the emotional journey that I'm going to take you on.
Wow, this is titillating. And is this in Los Angeles?
Yeah, south of Los Angeles and Downey. It's a place I've actually been to.
You've been there?
And yeah, so we're going to talk about it.
Wow. Okay. Can't wait. What has happened to you that's spooky this week, Carly?
I should have said this on the last episode when I went to go visit the Forest Lawn Glendale Mausoleum. As you know, I've been having flickering lights everywhere I go. Well, at the mausoleum.
Whoa, no.
When I went there, the lights were flickering.
Were they really?
Yeah. And so it's funny because I was about to say, you know, graveyards aren't really like haunted for me. Like I don't, but I just realized I'm like, oh, actually the lights were flickering.
Interesting.
So Carly, pay attention to what's going on.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That was at the Glendale location.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big, giant mausoleum.
The one where Michael Jackson is in?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Really?
Well, the thing here, the mausoleum is so huge that there's different sections. So to get to the Michael Jackson section, like that's a part that you need a separate access to, right? So you have to go across through the mausoleum. There's an arch that goes over the street and then into a different building. So that's the section that Michael Jackson's in.
Gotcha.
And you can look up online pretty easily to find out what the name of the section is.
Gotcha. Well, that's an interesting little spooky thing.
Yeah.
It's following you.
Yeah. It's very fun to see all the places I go that have flickering lights happen.
So disclaimer, my light is actually got an electrical situation that's a little worrisome, and it does flicker sometimes. So if it flickers,
But so far it hasn't.
But it'll do it, and then I jiggle it and it stops. So heads up for that.
So let's talk about this. This is going to be an epic. This is going to be a mini series.
Yeah.
It's an epic story about California history and how we take care of Californians. It's a journey of ups and downs. Of yay, we're gonna get this. Get our riches, and then oh no, and then wait, we can make something out of it. And there's the emotional arc, and I just see huge miniseries, epic miniseries.
Okay. We got a few of those building in many episodes now of this podcast that are potential.
So it's March 9th, 1842. The Mexican-American War hasn't happened yet, and Mexico, now independent from Spain, owns California. And the map of North America looks like this. You see the blue part, that's America. Mexico, yellow, owns California, and Canada up there. In Placerita Canyon, next to Santa Clarita and about 32 miles north of downtown Los Angeles, there is an oak tree. And it's sort of leaning, and its trunk is kind of hollowed out, and it looks like a cartoon tree with like a big open mouth. And allegedly this tree is 500 years old, but I don't think oaks can live that long. I think at most it's like 300 years old, and its trunk just doesn't look big enough. But this is what the tree looks like if you want to see my screen there. It's a big oak tree with a big old open mouth. It has a huge
opening in it.
Yeah,
I'm sure critters love crawling in there.
Yeah, it looks like a nice little coyote raccoon house. And it's here where a man named Francisco Lopez, who may have been a mineralogist, his backstory is not quite clear, is searching for stray horses, and he stops by the bank of a small creek. He lays down to take a nap and has a dream that he's floating along a river made of pure gold. And when he wakes up, he digs up some wild onions, something that the peasants did back then, and they would flavor their food. He takes the onions home and he washes them. And there in the water, he sees gold nuggets come loose from the onions. Is this real gold? He takes it to the authorities and they confirm, yes, this is real gold. And there's been other times around this time where the Mission Indians find gold, but the friars And the people around there at that time, they were kind of smart. And they're like, you guys keep this on the down low. Just keep quiet about this, okay?
Right. Let everybody rush to Northern California.
Yeah. In Francisco's case, though, he told people about it, as one does. Because honestly, okay, I find gold. I'm going to be like...
How are you not going to tell anybody?
I'm going to be like, it would be really smart if I just like keep quiet about this. But then, you show up at the pub and you've got like your gold chains on. People are like, where'd you get all this gold? And you're like, I don't know. And then suddenly rumors around like...
You're carrying gold pans around.
Carly is wearing a lot of gold lately. What's up with that?
We thought she was a silver girl.
Yeah, where did you get that like giant stagecoach that has those fancy horses pulling it? What's up with that? What's up with that, Francisco? So, but actually in Francisco's case, he's pretty smart. He charges the miners for the privilege of looking for gold on his property, so he makes a little bit of money. The Oak of the Golden Dream, that's what the oak tree was called, was made an official California historic landmark in 1935. And you can still visit it today in Plaza Verde Canyon. It looks just like that picture I showed you, and it's got a little plaque next to it. So that is not the beginning of the gold rush that everyone knows about, but I thought that was a nice little Southern California touch to the gold rush story. Yeah. So let's talk about the real gold rush. 6 years later, 400 miles north, James W. Marshall finds gold at Sutter's Mill. And though Sutter was like, please, you guys, be cool about this. Like, just down low. Just quiet. Stay quiet about this. Of course, people can't stay quiet. People are showing up at the pub with their gold chains on, and this guy, Samuel Brennan, he's the loudest. He's like, hey, do you guys notice my jewelry? Do you guys notice this bracelet? You guys, hey, what do you think about my suit? And then people are like, finally, okay, Samuel Brennan, why are you wearing this fancy suit? And he's like, I can't tell you.
Oh my!
And they're like, come on, Samuel Brennan, just tell us. And he's like, well, maybe you'll read my paper tomorrow. And they're like, we have to buy your paper. And he's like, maybe, you don't have to. And then headline of his paper it says, gold found in California. And it's a picture of him holding up his gold nugget. And he's like,
oh my goodness. So the original Instagram.
The New York Herald picks up the story, and President James K. Polk announces it to Congress that there's gold in California, and the California gold rush begins. Folks traveling to California from far and wide seeking gold are called 49ers because they mostly come in 1849. The population of San Francisco increases substantially. There were just 200 people in San Francisco in 1846, but in 1850, there are 25,000 full-time residents. In total, about 90,000 people come to California in 1849 alone, some arriving from as far away as Chile, Peru, Australia, China, and the Sandwich Islands.
Sandwich Islands?
It's Hawaii.
Oh, they called it the Sandwich Islands?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I need to brush up on my history. After
the Earl of Sandwich. His friend was like, we found these islands. I'm going to name it after my friend. The Earl of Sandwich.
Okay, yeah, that I didn't remember.
The gold rush reinforced the idea of manifest destiny, and whole indigenous societies were attacked and pushed off their land by the gold seekers. Very bad. The gold worth tens of billions in today's US dollars was recovered from the land, which led to great wealth for a few, though most 49ers earned little more than they had started with. And large-scale agriculture and civic organizations come into existence during this time to meet the needs of all the incoming population. And California becomes a U.S. state in 1850. But the gold rush is incredibly destructive, both to humans and the environment. The indigenous people are victims of starvation and disease as the gravel and the silt and the toxic chemicals kill off their fish and their hunting habitats. And farming increases, and the white settlers need more and more land, and so they take it from the Native Americans. And the miners themselves also attack the Native Americans. Sometimes they kill up to 50 or more in one day. And there are massacres where hundreds are killed. In total, about 370 massacres against Native Americans are committed around this time. One interesting outcome of the gold rush is the role it plays in opening men to exploring their sexual and gender fluidity. The gold rush is a sausage fest, of course, and there's some women there, but it's not 50-50.
No.
And just like what happens in pirate communities and cowboys and prisons, these young migrant men are exposed to situations that help them expand their social and sexual practices. And they hold dance events and square dances.
And they put the hankies. Yep. They put the hankies in different pockets of different color.
Where, the men wearing the blue bandana takes the male part in the square dance, and the man wearing the red bandana takes the female part. And this is the origin of the handkerchief code in gay culture. And there's also a certain amount of normalizing of so-called cross-dressing amongst minors. And this is from Wikipedia directly. These minors and merchants of various genders and gendered appearances, encouraged by the social fluidity and population limitations of the Wild West, shaped the beginnings of San Francisco's prominent queer history. So San Francisco has the gold rush to thank for the fact that it's like a gay Mecca, basically. Yep. Good word. Would San Francisco become the gay capital of the world if it weren't for the gold rush? Well, I mean, we have to acknowledge that there was an indigenous population there that had gender fluidity already. So it's like the gold rush didn't invent it, but it exposed gender fluidity to, people who came from outside of North America. And the movie here, we need a gay gold rush movie. Mining is hard life. Diseases are rampant. There's terrible storms, not enough food and water.
Also, for marketing and merchandise, places you couldn't get to except by mule trains. So a lot of people ran out of supplies.
Yeah.
Because supplies were on the minimum.
1 in 12 49ers perish due to disease. And another source, the Sacramento Bee, says 1 in every 5 miners who came to California in 1849 was dead within 6 months.
From disease or violence?
From violence, from disease, from accidents.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of accidents.
Yeah. But imagine going from, we're going to make our fortune, to most of you end up dead.
Yeah.
It's like cryptocurrency, but with death.
Right.
By the 1850s, the surface gold is all gone. Miners become wage laborers working for the larger companies that have the machinery and technology to extract the deeper down gold. Mining innovations become more invasive between the 1850s and 1860s, and between 1860 and 1880, the companies use this process called hydraulic mining, which involves shooting the landscape with huge water cannons. And they use this method. They extract $170 million worth of gold, but it devastates the rivers, and everyone downstream is just agriculture, they're farming, everything is messed up. And this leads to America's first environmental regulation, the Sawyer Act, which actually acknowledges how destructive hydraulic mining is, and it ends the practice in 1884. And then agriculture takes over as the dominant industry in California. The effects, though, of the gold rush and this type of mining still linger. 2 years ago, scientists found that elevated levels of a certain neurotoxin in local wildlife are the effects of the gold rush in the 19th century.
Well, there's people that still mine for gold and have family wars that are not in our news or our media today. Did you know that?
Wow, no.
Yeah,
what?
Just in the Sierras and the Nevadas, that there's people that they protect the history of their ancestors that were miners. Yes.
They're like, this is our ancestors' claim?
Yes, and people still murder each other over it. Jeez. It's very territorial, and it's very protective of, these people are very protective of their ancestors that were miners and might have been murderous or assholes or whatever. Wow. And so there's still fights and family wars over gold claims up to this day.
Wow.
That the Sierra Nevadas, But you don't see that in the news, do you?
I didn't know about that. I'm going to have to Google that. Yeah. So John Sutter did not fare well from the gold rush.
I've been to Sutter's Fort.
He was telling everyone, you guys be cool. Just shut the fuck up about this, But by 1852, he was bankrupt. And in 1880, he died in a Washington hotel, bitter and alone. And after the rush ends, or, the miners slowly, individually decide to check out, peace out, bye guys, many of them head to Los Angeles because the weather's better and they can hopefully improve their health. And those who came to LA were often sick and destitute. And
what were they sick with?
All the diseases. There were like several waves of smallpox which I'm going to actually do a whole episode on the smallpox thing, because there were multiple waves of that, and then just diseases they didn't even know what it was, but like people were like screaming.
I wonder what that was.
There's just like all the things. There's bad times.
Probably a lot of syphilis type things too.
Oh yeah, all the
because there were a lot of they had the trains that came across the country, and they had brothels set up in tents and stuff. And tent cities along the way, and them hookers and them miners. Wasn't very clean. But that's what that was.
So it's 1858, 9 years after the gold rush begins, and 8 years after California becomes a state, and California is expanding its infrastructure to accommodate all these migrants. And the LA County supervisors decide to fund the Los Angeles Infirmary to care for the city's poor and needy residents, including those sick and destitute 49ers. And they were actually a big part of this. The costs for the infirmary skyrocket, though. From 1868 to 1869, expenses double as the number of people needing care increases. And the Board of Supervisors starts asking the state of California to pick up more of the costs, since most of the migrants, the 49ers, are not LA County residents. And they begin thinking about creating a poorhouse. But when they try to get approval for one in 1876, the proposal fails. However, they're able to, in 1878, open a general hospital and a farm. And the idea is the residents there are expected to work on the farm in return for assistance. So they grow food to feed all the patients at the hospital and also the staff, and to ease the financial burden on the county. And this place is called the Los Angeles County Poor Farm.
Terrible choice of a title, of a name of a place. I mean, it's not very enticing, It was a great business model, it sounds like.
But if you're poor and you need
farming,
if you're poor, you need a place to live, and also you need a hospital to take care of all your sickness and stuff. It's like, oh, that's a good. They didn't have Social Security yet, so they're like, this is a good option. On its original 1878 site, the Poor Farm was 30 acres and located about a mile from downtown LA. I tried to find out the exact location. I couldn't find it out. The county supervisors realized that it could be an excellent place for medical students to train, and so the Poor Farm plays a role in establishing the University of Southern California's College of Medicine in 1885, the first medical school in the area. But in the 1880s, there's a real estate boom, and the land the Poor Farm is on is too valuable. So like, we can't be wasting all this valuable land on you sick and poor people. So they're like, here's some land down in Downey, a little town called Downey, about 13 miles south of LA. And on this land, there's 124 acres. There's shading trees, and they plant rose bushes. They put in a craftsman-style mansion for the superintendent, and the campus has 3 main buildings: a Victorian-style building that has a kitchen, a reading room, storage room, offices, and bedrooms for the employees. And then there's brick buildings for the men and women's wards, which have long porches where the residents can, as the farm literature says, enjoy the evening breeze and smoke a clay pipe or take an afternoon nap in a rocking chair. The food grown on the farm feeds the residents and the staff while supplying the county hospital with food as well. The leftovers are sold to cushion the institution's cost. But it takes time to build, and before the buildings are finished, the residents are living in tents. Among the early residents of the farm are many former 49ers who are elderly and alone, and some have tuberculosis, mental and physical disabilities, and also epilepsy and mental illnesses and alcoholism. An 1892 LA Times article says, "The farm is now an attractive place. Trees have been planted, including 3,800 choice orange trees, which produce fine fruit, also eucalyptus trees for windbreaks, cypress hedges, lawns, and flowers. More than enough vegetables are raised for home consumption, and some are sold. Alfalfa and sugar beets furnish food for the stock. A number of cows, hogs, and poultry yield more than sufficient milk, pork, and lard and eggs to supply the inmates."
That's amazing. That was actually a very advanced business model.
Very smart.
Ahead of the times.
And a lot of this next section comes from an amazing 2015 PBS SoCal article by Hadley Mears, which is phenomenal. I'm going to drop a link in the show notes. There's photos. There's so much detail. But here's some incredibly wholesome passages. Though most of the inmates had been poor laborers, there were exceptions like William Wilmore, a once prosperous developer of what would become Long Beach, and James Eastman, a highly respected lawyer whose life had been ruined by alcoholism. While Wilmore's friends eventually rescued him, no one came to Eastman's aid, and he was buried in the farm's now lost cemetery. Apparently, many of the headstones and the bodies were washed away by a huge flood in the 1930s. So here's a passage that the article quotes from a journalist visiting in 1902. Near the noon hour, the men assemble in the sunshine of the court, and there await the dinner bell. It is a picturesque sight to see these aged, bearded men sitting, standing, or reclining as they converse together. Each inmate is supplied with a white iron bed with comfortable springs, good mattress, an abundance of bedding, a chair, and a small stand. The rooms are immense, and sometimes 30 beds are lined up along the side. There are no curtains in these men's apartments, and the flood of light is intense, quite different from the subdued, quiet shadow influences of the women's department. Here, the walls are decked with pictures cut from newspapers and magazines. The beds are spread with white counterpanes, and everything is as immaculately crisp and primly conventional as in a city mansion. At the windows that overlook the beautiful grounds, the old ladies sit and rock and meditate. Some are always busy knitting and sewing or tending a little garden that has been set aside for them.
That's kind of beautiful.
Right? By 1901, there are 165 men living at the poor farm and 24 women. The majority of them are over 60 and in need of medical care. There are reports of mistreatment occasionally, though. But the challenge is that according to the laws of the time, the indigent and sick are the charges of the county, and the mentally and developmentally disabled were the charges of the state. But these are complex human beings. Some of them are poor and sick. Some of them are mentally disabled as well. So some of them are mentally disabled and poor. Like, there's a lot of overlap. And though there are separate wards for like the different genders, the children are included, and children are living with adults.
Children are part. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting.
Back in the day, they didn't realize that like having children and adults living together is not a good idea. Like, I don't know why people didn't realize this, but
yeah, it couldn't have been smooth. So they were children of the residents, or they were children in need of medical, mental, or
all of the above. Yeah, okay. Yeah. And so the state of California decides to build an asylum in Southern California, and so they find a 360-acre site north of San Bernardino. And there's a theory that the governor at the time, Robert W. Waterman, secretly owned that land, so he was benefiting from the sale of that land to the state. But no one was able to figure out for sure if he was getting money from it. It opens in 1893 as the Southern California State Asylum for the Insane, aka Highland State Asylum. And I'm going to do a full separate episode on this because this is a whole separate thing. But to give you kind of an idea of what it was like for people at the time, a woman and a man who are street preachers in 1912 are technically legally married to other people, but they live together as man and wife, and they have a son that they named Jesus Christ. So these people are not doing anyone any harm, but very religious. And plainclothes officers arrest them and take them before a judge. And the judge asks simply, "Do you claim that this man, James, is your husband?" And the woman just says, "Yes, I do. And what God hath joined together, let no man put asunder." And so, I mean, she believes that this man that she's living with is her husband. She's decided it. Yes, technically she's married to someone else, but it's not really hurting anyone. But the judge just slams his gavel and says committed. So you can get committed for just
being in love and hand fasting or something,
Yeah, just making your own
rules. Right.
Living arrangements, right? Yeah. And so she's sent to Southern California Asylum in San Bernardino for several months, and her husband goes there for 3 years. And something that's not really publicly discussed in these places where they rely on the inmates to do the work to keep it all running is that they need people who are able-bodied to keep these institutions running. So there's this time in the 19th century, early 20th century, where you could get committed for pretty much any reason at all. And the Angelina Jolie movie, The Changeling, kind of is a perfect example of this.
I forgot about that movie. That's a good movie. Yes.
Yeah, and so... And there's even a quote that kind of like openly addresses this, where an official says, this is some people's time that they're putting in to be of service to the state by being committed to these asylums and doing work on the farm. And unpaid inmate labor became profitable because working inmates were only paid $1 a month and given a little extra tobacco. That was their pay. And the farms, the poor farm in LA, its orange crop brought in $13,000 in 1909.
That was a lot for them. There was a lot of trees, so I was just thinking, when you have the number of trees, that's a good profit.
Yeah, which is about $500,000 in today's money.
Wow.
So ward attendants in California's hospitals, and at the turn of the century, made the 20th century, I should say, at the turn of the 20th century, made $30 to $40 a month, and that's about $1,000 to $1,300 in today's money. And they worked hours lasting from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. and they got half a day off each week and 1 full day off each month. And I was like, oh my God, you guys need to unionize so bad.
That's fun.
The PBS SoCal article goes on to tell of a despondent resident named George Deacon, who actually drowned himself in a nearby river, a guy named Bud Lewis, who is the farm's bread cutter, and he jumped out of a window.
They both committed suicide?
Yeah, and a grand jury investigation leads to sweeping changes. These include requiring fair distribution of food, clean and well-lit wards, and humane and kindly treatment of inmates, with the promise that any case of unnecessary force of violence on the part of employees is punished by instant dismissal. Some additional wholesome stories are provided in the article, and there's a story of a sea captain who's 100 years old, and he sings this song. When a bit of sunshine hits you after passing of a cloud, when a fit of laughter gets ya and your spine is feeling proud, don't forget to up and fling it at a soul that's feeling blue. For the minute that you sling it, it's a boomerang to you.
Wow. Well done, Carly. Good clap for that.
100-year-old sea captain song. I love it. In 1915, a 26-year-old named William Ruddy Harriman arrives to be the new superintendent. And this, I see, if we make this a movie, this is the opening act of the movie. And Timothy Chalamet is going to play.
Well, he can play everybody, so why not?
He's going to play William Ruddy Harriman in the movie of this. This is your next role, Timothy. He memorizes the name of every employee and patient. He tells people to just call him Bill. He plays Santa Claus at Christmas every year for the children and has a vision to turn the grounds into the feeling of a small town while also being a world-class rehabilitation hospital. He changes the name of the farm to Hondo after the Rio Hondo, which ran through the property, and it becomes its own town with its own post office. And he builds a new administration building, an auditorium, infirmary buildings, medical offices, men and women psychopathic wards, additional housing for staff and patients and bathhouses. He encourages relationships with charitable groups and introduces occupational therapy. He gives the patients frequent motion picture shows, musical events, and arts and crafts activities.
That's like a Renaissance man took over.
I'm waiting for you to say he's like the Stede Bonnet.
Yeah, that could. Yes,
poor farms.
He is the Stede Bonnet. Yeah.
Patients learn furniture making, how to work at the printing press. They play sports.
Did he wear fine things well?
I will have to find a photo of him. Employees form basketball teams, baseball teams, musical groups, and social clubs. The farm wins prizes for its milking cows and valuable, get this, Belgian and Percheron draft horses.
Really?
And it makes me wonder, there's so many Belgian draft horses around LA. In Northern California, I can't remember ever seeing a Belgian draft horse, but when I came to LA, there's tons of them everywhere. And I wonder if they're like relatives.
I bet they are. They have to
farm.
be. Percherons too. I mean, there's quite a few.
Yeah. By 1929, the farm averages 1,900 patients staying on the farm. Then the Great Depression happens. Funding dries up, but the number of needy patients multiplies. So William Reddy Herringman, he builds a tent city to accommodate everyone. And he gives the farm a new name, Rancho Los Amigos, Ranch of Friends.
Oh, I like that so much better.
I know. By 1934, it's grown to 540 acres with around 2,781 patients. Though many patients still come from poor backgrounds, the Depression brings a greater number of lawyers, artists, scientists, writers, and many lady music teachers to the campus.
That's specific. Lady music teachers?
I'm
What?
imagining like the ladies that you like hire to teach your daughter's piano lessons. I don't know.
Interesting.
And here is a little quote from an LA Times article in 1934. An old fellow paused during a game of checkers to tug a tobacco pouch from a well-worn pocket. As he wrenched it free, something fell to the floor with a pleasant ring. It was a Carnegie Medal for bravery. And by the way, you can still earn Carnegie medals today. It's for when like a civilian does something really brave to save the life of another person. So like if you run into a burning building to save someone's life and you like risk your own life, you could win a Carnegie Medal for that. So the Carnegie Medal falls to the ground. He quickly picks it up and puts it back in his pocket. And another fellow asks, "Wasn't that a Carnegie Medal?" The guy playing the checkers nods. And this other guy goes, "I got one too." And he pulled it out of his pocket. They both had Carnegie medals. These two men who were heroes who'd done something extremely brave in their life both ended up at Rancho Los Amigos.
And they were amigos, so there's that.
Yeah, at a poor farm.
But that is how mighty fall, right?
Well, it's the Great Depression,
Yeah.
but like they had a community to go to.
Yeah, at least they had that.
when they
Yeah.
were hauled on hard times. The article goes on. The powerhouse whistle blows 6 times a day to signal meal times and bedtime stories. Soothing concerts are played over the speaker system. There's a miniature zoo, a small golf course, a ragtag band of patients play instruments on the street. They sing folk songs and American songs with ukuleles, guitars, violins, and mouth harps. And there's still problems. There's still alcoholism. There's still people have depression. Everyone's needy, but they have community.
They have community and they have safety.
And they have a superintendent who loves them and cares about them. And in 1938, the Social Security Act is passed, and poor people and senior citizens are able to get welfare and Social Security. So they now have a little money, and they can either choose to move out, they can choose to pay for nursing elsewhere. And it's the start of World War II. And the able-bodied patients find work in the aviation industry, and they leave the ranch. Some people, though, consider the ranch home, and they choose to pay rent and stay there. Those who aren't able to leave, but who want to help out with the war effort, they form their own little company called Warco in the crafting building, and many wheelchair users work at the various aircraft companies, and they sort through sweepings sent from the local factories, and they look for like usable nuts and bolts and metals and things that can help. Part of the ranch becomes an army base called Camp Morrow.
That's really interesting. I mean, who would have thought that a place like that would become anything to do with the war and an army base?
Yeah. In 1944, an emergency hospital is founded, and a group of 32 polio victims is transferred there to the rancho. And this is the beginning of the polio ward, which would become one of the premier polio treatment and rehabilitation centers in the country. By 1951, the rancho is considered a premier hospital. And think this is now 100 years after the gold rush.
Wow.
The mental health wards soon get shut down, and the animals get sold off. And William Herringman retires in 1952 and dies 2 years later. And this part makes me cry because there's still people hanging on there. Until 1976, Eddie Higgins, a beloved developmentally handicapped man who had called the ranch home since 1926, 50 years. He could be found making his daily rounds, cheering everyone on, from doctors to fellow patients.
Amazing.
I read that and I cried. I'm
Oh
like,
my goodness.
Eddie
They're
Higgins.
really young.
He's been there his whole life.
That was all he knew. Oh.
As the Rancho Hospital grows, most of its expansion happens on the other side of the freeway. So this is the Imperial Highway freeway in Downey. And so the buildings on the original campus, the south side of the freeway, they get abandoned. And in 1988, all the vacant buildings get boarded up. And on June 26, 2017, arsonists destroy William Harriman's former home. And in 2021, the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors approved the demolition of the 103 vacant buildings in the South Campus historic area.
Just tore him down.
Yeah, but they approved it, but they didn't tear them down yet. In 2022, arsonists ignite another fire, which destroyed 2 buildings. And in March of 2024, Rancho Los Amigos was completely demolished.
Did they put something else up there?
It's just
Flat land?
Yeah, it's just like
There better not be like a Walmart there or something.
And I started this like because I'm like, oh, this is a really interesting story, and then I looked at pictures and I'm like, oh my god, I've been there. So in the early 2010s, there was a cat rescue because there's so many cats. There's cats and raccoons, and they had the buildings all boarded up, and they were talking about, tearing them down. But there was like so many cats, hundreds of cats there. So I went with a cat rescue, and I made a video of them feeding the cats and trapping the cats. They were going to play the video at they were having like a Beverly Hills fundraiser thing. So I wandered around the buildings. It was literally like post-apocalyptic. It looked like everyone just kind of up and left.
But there's
20
still
years ago.
items laying around?
There were filing cabinets and papers and folders.
Weird.
And it looked like there were people there at one time, but like Chernobyl, they just like
split.
left.
Weird.
And so it was really cool. It was really creepy. I loved it. I was like, and we were there at night, so we were there with like flashlights and stuff. And I was like, this is amazing. This is like the X-Files.
Did you feel any woo-woo stuff while you were there?
I was just mostly focused on how cool I thought it was, So I don't know if I was creeped out in a scared way. I was like, well, one, there was like all these cats and there's raccoons and stuff. And I was like, these are adorable. And yeah, but there's a lot of rumors around the place being haunted. In 2006, Marines used the place to do a training exercise. And of course, I'm sure Marines were just like doing a training exercise, but also like fucking around a little bit. And they opened an abandoned freezer and found packages full of mummified body parts.
What?
The freezer was in the hospital morgue, and the body parts were probably 30 to 40 years old. And the coroner's office revealed the package contained 10 legs, feet, and brain matter.
Oh no. Ew.
Oh my God, but could you imagine being there in that building and being like, I'm going to open up this drawer. What's this?
Surprise. Well, if anybody could tolerate it, be a Marine. They probably, whatever. I've seen it all.
Oh my God, right? So on Reddit, I looked to see if anyone had any creepy stories. And I'm going to post a link to this full Reddit post in the show notes. But the title of this is The Cult of the Downey Insane Asylum. And the poster writes, about 2 years ago, my friend and I found out about an abandoned insane asylum located at Downey. Okay, it's not an insane asylum.
I was just going to say, is it really though? It doesn't sound
They had
Right, they had some
wards.
Right, some patients that were.
But it wasn't an insane
wasn't
asylum.
Especially a classic asylum as we think of an asylum to be.
And it certainly wasn't like the place out in San Bernardino, which I'll talk about. That's a whole different pile of beans. But being the curious 17-year-olds that we were, we decided it would be a good idea to explore this abandoned facility just to see what we could find inside. So on a Saturday night, we gathered a few more of our friends and made the drive out to Downey so we could explore this building for ourselves. After about 30 minutes of driving, we arrive in Downey and make our way through the city to where the asylum is located. Again, not an asylum, but whatever. The closer we get, the shadier and shadier the neighborhoods we're passing through become, and after about 15 minutes, we arrive at our destination. We park the car, we climb through a hole in the fence, and we make our way into the building to see what we could find. To be honest, it started out being not too bad, considering we had about 10 people. We were thinking, what's the worst that could happen to a group of 10 people? So we meander through the building, looking at all the broken furniture scattered through the rooms, the patient files thrown on the floor, and which were pretty much just having a good time looking at stuff that was once this weird mental institution. But this is where shit gets weird. As we're walking, we, of course, had a flashlight pointed down the hallway because the power had gone out and the building was completely out. But as we're walking with our flashlight pointed ahead, we come across a corner and we see an adjacent wall light up, and we assumed it was another flashlight of other kids. And we turn a corner, see a group of 4 kids, shady, weird fucking kids. We confront each other and they ask us if we've been to the slide. We politely answer no because we have no idea what they're talking about. And they tell us that we should follow them. Of course, we decline because we're getting weird vibes off these people. And as they're talking amongst themselves, one of the kids comes up to me with, I kid you not, a solid 6-inch long Bowie knife. Isn't this cool? Look what I found, he says, as he moves the knife closer to my face. I pointedly answer what a cool find that is, and we start to back away, telling them that we're going to explore the roof, and surprisingly they say all right, and they turn the corner and they continue on their way. All right, so now that that was out of the way, I'm seriously beginning to feel weird about being in this place, and we make our way to the roof, and people are not supposed to be here, so we keep an eye on the police car stationed at the main gate to make sure no one comes in. As soon as we're up there, we try to figure out the best path to get out without getting noticed by the police. That's when my friend sees a fire escape ladder coming down. We are able to boost us up to a higher position, and my friend Jonah goes up and immediately turns around so he can help other people out by pulling them up. And as I'm getting myself up there, my heart completely fucking sinks. Jonah, did you not see this when you got up here? I whisper. What the fuck are you talking about, man? He responds. I'm looking forward, and he slowly turns to see what was pretty much our worst fucking nightmare. There's about 15 hooded people sitting in a circle up there.
What?
Surrounding a burning cat or some other dead animal. These motherfuckers are talking in tongues and just making noises which seem satanic. As we're both getting down, we get noticed and they start talking amongst themselves in this weird language. And as soon as we get down, these motherfuckers stand up and start sprinting towards us. I tell everyone to ditch the idea of the fire escape. We need to get the fuck out of here. So we start sprinting toward the building with this cult in close behind us. We miraculously make it out of the building and are starting to run across the field to the main gate. And we're doing this so the cop notices all the commotion, turns on his sirens, and comes driving in. Thank God he manages to cut the cult off from us, and he starts to chase them as we get away safely. Honestly, I can safely say it was the scariest experience of my life. What would we have done if they'd taken one of our friends? Would we have to go back in and confront them? I don't know, and I'm glad that didn't happen. And I read that post and I was like, holy crap, that is terrifying.
Scary. That is a true American horror story, right?
Terrifying, yeah.
In fact, it sounds like one.
Yeah. But that is the ups and downs and many journeys from the gold rush to the poor farm to the ranch of friends to the satanic cult headquarters that was demolished in Downey.
Just makes you think that stuff is going around all around us all the time and we don't know where. Like weird culty shit.
There's a lot of cults in LA. Yeah.
That's why you all need to rescue black kitties if you're a cat person, because they are the last to be adopted and the first to be abused and used in these horrible ways. I love black cats, and I just...
Me too. Yeah,
well, that's a creeper.
Sorry to end on that bad note, but the whole story of William Ruddy Harriman and Timothy Chalamet playing that role and building up this farm, and oh no, the depression hits. Is it going to all be ruined? And he's like, no, we're going to build a tent city. We're going to make this work. And then maybe the midpoint is when he dies and the people there are like, we are sad, but we're like, we can keep this going maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact structure of it, but the scene of the old timer who was there for 50 years, that like retro, like I love the idea of like all the different characters. It reminded me a lot of Crip Camp. Have you seen Crip Camp? Oh my God, it's a really wholesome documentary. It was produced by the Obamas, and it's on
I've
Netflix.
heard of that. Yeah,
it will make you cry. It's so emotional. It's so wholesome. It's it's one of those like you'll be so happy you just like cry. You know, it's so
I do want to see it. I have heard of it. Yeah.
But it reminds me of Crip Camp. It's like there's this really a wholesome story there.
Yeah, there is. Well, there was a lot of good that this place did.
Yeah,
There's a lot of good energy there that hopefully didn't mind taking my nails off. Don't mind. My Christmas nails are on, and it's time to remove them and get to New Year's. So there was a lot of good energy there. So hopefully that didn't feed those creepy satanic cult souls much. But interesting.
And I do know there was a rescue getting all the cats out. They did? I'll have to figure out.
Yeah.
I'll look into like if they actually did rescue all the cats.
Yeah, I would love to.
I was really worried about the buildings being boarded up with cats inside and then demolished. That was what we were like really worried about.
So they knew that, so hopefully they got them out in time.
Yeah. Because they were doing a lot of trapping, a lot of feeding, a lot of all that stuff.
That's a good story, Carly.
And what are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to the holidays being over. Kind of done with them. What about you? Are you there with them?
I'm looking forward to eating. I'm really hungry right now.
Yeah, let's eat. Sounds good.
Okay, you guys follow us on Haunted Hollywood Hour on Instagram. Be sure to give us a subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a comment or a rating or a review. We'll read it on here. And tell your friends about it as well so that we can get more listeners. Right now we have 53 subscribers.
That's great.
Which makes me, all of you are in our cult now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we do nice things.
We're the nice cult.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you're part of our family in this early days of this podcast. And we're always open to feedback and your stories too. If you have a story to share.
Yeah. I want to hear them.
Write it down. Send it to us in an email at hauntedhollywoodhour@gmail.com.
Okay. That sounds good. Let's eat.
Bye.
Bye.